So, the hype around the viral timepieces from Swatch and Audemars Piguet continues, and now we know why those buyers work so hard to get their hands on those watches.
Maybe they like the watches, Arnold.
Yeah, maybe.
But the resale prices, that really speaks for itself. These prices have skyrocketed into the thousands, and analysts say that the sellers are taking advantage of that small window of opportunity to flip the watches and make a profit.
Yeah, that excitement erupted outside Swatch stores across the world over the weekend when people queued for hours to get their hands on the Royal Pop collaboration. There's that fist fight in Milan, tear gas and police deployed in Paris, and snaking queues, overnight lines in London, New York, and even right here in Singapore. And at the center of it all, those colorful $400 pocket watches that are now selling up to 10 times more than the retail value.
I queued it for like 2 days out here in the tent. So I just want to get this watch because Swatch collab with really good brand Audemars Piguet, that's AP, and it's really good to have this collection in my watch collection.
Well, it's a collaboration between Swatch and AP that hasn't been done. Apparently, there's limited stock where it's going to be valuable.
He's almost right. That trend, apparently, it has a name. Listen, it's called drop culture. It's a retail strategy that's captured younger consumers. That's when status symbols and resale value collide with buzz around a product driving sales.
So, for more on drop culture, let's speak now to luxury strategist Daniel Langer. He's CEO of Equite. Daniel, great to have you on the show. Very interesting conversation. We're expecting, so this is not the first time Swatch is doing this. We know it's done it with Omega, Blancpain, but Audemars Piguet is different because it's not owned by Swatch, unlike the other two. So I'm wondering how important, how significant is this for the luxury as well as the mass market watch sectors?
Yeah, thank you first of all for having me. Talking about the significance, I think it's going to be, this question is going to be answered probably more in about a few years than today, because after the fact, we will always be more clever. I'm a little bit skeptical about this collaboration. And this is not because the collaboration created the hype. You just saw this on the pictures. But the question is, what does the hype do to the brand equity, especially of Audemars Piguet? I think for Swatch there's no risk. Swatch, has proven that they can pull off something that people want for a while. But the bigger question is AP, which has been one of the most exclusive watch brands in the world. And especially the Royal Oak, that sometimes have wait times that can be several months or several years. How this will be long-term on them. And here I'm a bit skeptical.
Yeah, I mean, part of the discussion is also whether it's trying to start the next generation, people to have the ambition to buy an AP when they grow older. I mean, how effective is that going to be? Because it's going to be many, many years down the road. And then for the other side, Swatch, it seems like they may really need this kind of sales boost because I think its operating profit has more than halved last year. It fell, I think, about 75% in 2024. Then it's done the collaborations with Omega, as we talked about earlier, but can it keep relying on these, surprise collaborations to improve overall profitability? Is it better for Swatch to just go private, for example?
I think, the question, this is a quite interesting question about how much can a brand rely on that long term. I think when Swatch did the first big collaboration, the Moon Swatch, some time ago, that was a huge impact immediately. But then it's interesting to look at what happened afterwards. This impact was extremely short-lived. Today, basically, the hype around the Moon Swatch has faded quite a bit. And as you said, the numbers of the Swatch brand are negative. But also when you look at Omega, the boost that Omega got for a while when they did the collaboration also faded quite a bit. And this is a bit exactly, I think, the concern that one should have, to rely on collaborations like that. So why is there this big hype around AP? It is probably because it is so unexpected. You know, again, AP, one of the most exclusive watch brands in the world that never has done a collaboration like this. This basically has already in the weeks before there was a huge anticipation and so on. I wrote an article about that, and it was interesting to see that half of the people who read it said this is a great collaboration. The other half said it's a bad collaboration. So you can see even the experts are divided. But definitely, when you are Swatch and you rely a lot on other brands to build your brand equity, that's not a good move. If you're AP and you hope, as you said, you hope that the next generation of clients will come to you just because they may have the pop watch right now, and then maybe in 5 years or so, because of that, convert into buying the real thing. I think that is I think that is not very realistic. You had already a brand that was incredibly sought after. And as a sought after brand, typically desirability is created by scarcity, by a certain difficulty in getting it. And now basically democratizing such a thing and then hoping that this is a spillover that brings them long-term brand equity, I don't buy that at all. I think actually this is a very, very dangerous move for AP because AP is really dependent on the Royal Oak. The Royal Oak is about 90% of their sales. And to me, the pictures that you showed before of the stores with the riots and so on, ask yourself, is this something as a brand you really want to be associated with? And also you mentioned before that price hiked and resale prices hiked. But also interestingly, when you look at the numbers this morning and also already yesterday, so a few hours later, they already start to fade. So this hype is going to be there for sure for a couple of days, maybe a couple of weeks, maybe a couple of months. But I have huge doubts that this is going to be a long-term brand equity play. And again, looking at the numbers of Omega and the first collaboration that Swatch has been doing, they show that long-term you don't really gain from doing something like that.
But if you say that the Royal Oak has a long sort of queue to actually get your watch delivered, wouldn't that mean that Audemars Piguet has a long runway to actually deliberate its next step in, I guess, repairing its image after what might have damaged it this time round?
It could, but the interesting thing is, and I've done a lot of research on that, desirability is a kind of very fragile animal. Things are desired because there is a lot of things that are done right. And especially when it comes to luxury, you build a reputation by doing repeatedly the right things. And the world is full of examples where brands were starting to grow and then wanted to accelerate the growth and then start to do things that are incongruent, line extensions that don't really make sense or don't really fit into what the brand has been doing so far. And then when you look at the long term, in most cases, it is detrimental to the brand equity. Honestly, I don't know any case where a brand did a collaboration with a brand that was significantly below in terms of price point, in terms of quality perception, where the brand actually was gaining long term. I don't know any case of that.
Okay.
So this is why I'm personally extremely skeptical about this.
Right. So Daniel, you're a luxury strategist. So I just want to move this into other sectors. Can this go beyond watches, you think? I mean, for example, could you try something between Joel Robuchon or Odette or Les Amis with Denny's, with IHOP or even McDonald's?
Yeah, you see that collaborations in the luxury industry are nothing new, and they I don't want to say it started, but I think one of the collaboration that probably almost everyone has in mind, and that has become almost like a defining moment, was Murakami and Louis Vuitton in the early 2000s. That they now kind of reiterated with a second generation just recently, and that was a huge success. But I think here the interesting thing is, why was this successful? Is because you had an incredible control on the brand equity, and you bring with Murakami a proven artist with a lot of cultural relevance. And so you combine both and you create something that creates also really long-term value and lasting value. Then once that collaboration launched, you could see in almost any product category, companies starting to kind of reiterate on that model. I analyzed a while ago a lot of these collaborations, and actually when you really look at the numbers, the majority of collaborations don't really work long term. They generate very little incremental sales, and then long term they almost never add that. So if it's done in the right way, and you have two brands where it makes really sense, and when you can create basically like 1 + 1 gets 3, then it makes sense. I see in this case, Swatch and AP, I have a hard time seeing where where this additional 1, so the three really is. So I'm always, I think collaborations are interesting. They are done, if they're done in the right way, they can be successful. But there's very few examples that really show some super positive outcome long term.
Understood. Thank you so much, Daniel, for talking to us. Very, very insightful and fascinating. Daniel Langer is CEO at Equite.